Leona Hayes sat alone in the quiet control room of Earth's outer listening post. Station Eco 7. Screens blinked softly around her. Most of the time, her job was simple. Watch, listen, and report. Nothing ever happened this far from home. She often said, "Space is quiet, and quiet is good." But not tonight. It started with a strange sound, a whisper. A broken signal that cracked through the silence like lightning through calm clouds. Leona frowned and leaned closer to the console. Static filled the room, and then something else. A voice that was faint and full of fear. She couldn't understand all the words, but the emotion was clear. Desperation, panic, a cry for help. Her fingers flew across the keys. "Station command, this is Eco 7. I've picked up an unknown transmission, requesting analysis and immediate uplink." She replayed the message. This time it was clearer. "Fire everywhere. No escape, please." "Help us." Leona sat back slowly. Her heart beat faster. It wasn't just noise. It was real. Someone out there was in trouble. She played the message again and again, trying to catch every word. The signal carried something else, 2 coordinates. A place deep in uncharted space, beyond Earth's colonies, and one final whisper before the message ended. Humans. Leona stared at the screen. How did they know about humans? Did they know Earth could hear them? Or was it just a desperate guess? She didn't have the answers. But she felt something deep inside her, a pull, like a string tied to her chest, tugging her forward. A memory floated into her mind. It was of her brother, Mason. He had moved to another planet 3 years ago. They used to talk every day, but now, silence. Messages sent and never returned. She didn't know if he was busy or if something had gone wrong. All she knew was the silence hurt, and now, this voice, this signal felt the same. Someone reaching out into darkness, hoping someone would care enough to answer. That feeling of distance, of losing someone important, was too familiar. She opened a private log and began recording. "This is Commander Leona Hayes. I'm forwarding a deep space. Distress signal to Earth Global Council. Coordinates included. Unknown sender. Message includes requests for help, signs of attack and human identification, recommending immediate review and possible response. I believe this is genuine." She paused. "I also believe no one should ever cry out into the dark and be ignored." She sent the report. The station returned to silence, but something had changed. The stars felt different. More alive? That night, Leona didn't sleep. She watched the recording over and over. The voice, the fear, the courage it must have taken to send that message, knowing it might never reach anyone. She remembered how hard it had been to write to Mason after a year of silence. The first message had been short. "I miss you. Are you okay?" It had taken weeks for a reply, but when it came, it said, "I miss you too. Let's talk again." That moment had taught her something about humans. They don't give up, even when they feel alone. Even when the people they love seem far away. They try. They reach out, again and again. Hope isn't something you find. It's something you choose. And maybe, just maybe, whoever sent this message was like that too. In the morning, Earth's Global Council responded. Signal was real. The source was unknown. But what stood out was Leona's final sentence. "I believe no one should ever cry out into the dark and be ignored." That one line was read in every room of the council chambers. Some members shook their heads. Others nodded slowly. Earth had rules. It stayed out of conflicts. It watched, learned, avoided war. But Earth also remembered what it meant to be alone. And it remembered what it meant to have someone show up, even when they didn't have to. That day, Earth made a choice. They would send a ship, not to fight, not to conquer, but to listen, to answer a signal that wasn't even meant for them, because that's what humans do. Leona was chosen to lead the mission as she stood in the hangar. Looking at the sleek ship ready for launch, she thought again. About the voice in the signal, about her brother, about all the people who feel far away, but are always waiting for someone to reach out. She whispered, "We're coming." Leona Hayes sat in the meeting room of Earth's Global Council. Her were important people leaders from different nations, scientists, generals, and advisors. A large screen behind them showed the broken signal she had found just days ago. The voice still played softly in the background. "Please, help us." Leona looked down at her hands. They were shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from something deeper. A feeling she couldn't name, part sadness, part hope. She thought of Mason again. Her brother had moved to Colony Rhea, far away on the edge of Earth's reach. At first, they messaged often. He didn't answer her last one. She never said it out loud, but she was worried. Maybe something had happened. Maybe he had just forgotten. Or maybe he felt distant too. Now, as she sat among powerful people, she felt like that same message was in her heart. "Please, help us." The council chairwoman, Madame Misha Rollin, spoke. "We've all heard the signal. We've read the report. Now we must decide. Do we answer this?" But another voice, a general from Earth Security. Force said, "We don't know who sent it. It could be a trap. We risk too much," scientists replied. But the signal had DNA markers, human ones, that cannot be ignored. It's not a random message. Leona stood up slowly. Her voice was quiet but clear. "I don't think this is a trick. I think someone out there trusted us. Or maybe hoped someone like us would care." She paused, remembering how long it took her to send Mason a second message after silence. It had felt hard. She didn't know what to say. She didn't want to sound desperate. She looked around the room. Sometimes people drift apart. Planets do too. But when someone finally speaks up, even if it's late, even if it's small, that voice matters. No one said anything. The room was silent. Then Madame Rallin leaned forward. "You believe this message is real?" "Yes," Leona said. "And I believe it's not about war. It's about who we are." The council took a vote. It wasn't easy. Some said no. Some said yes. But when the final vote came, the results were clear. Earth would respond. A mission was approved. Ship would be sent to investigate the signal, not to fight, but to understand, to offer help if needed. Leona was named the leader. That evening, as she walked alone in the city, she looked up at the sky. The stars were bright. She found herself thinking about Mason again. She had written him another message just before the council meeting. Just 5 simple words. "I hope you're okay." Well, it wasn't much. It was something. Maybe that's what this mission was, to not a grand war, but a simple message to the universe. You're not alone. The next morning, preparations began. Earth's engineers worked quickly. The ship ESV Valor was chosen for the journey. It was fast, quiet, and strong, but built for peace. It had science labs, medical rooms, even space for guests. It was designed not for battle, but for contact. Leona met the team. Pilots, doctors, translators, peace officers, people from many nations and walks of life, all ready to travel far, not knowing what they'd find. Everyone had their own reasons for joining. Some were curious, some felt inspired. One young technician said, "My sister used to live on a colony that never answered. Maybe this time someone will." Leona smiled gently. "That's why we go." Later, while checking systems, she received a small alert on her wrist screen. A new message. Her heart skipped. It was from Mason. She opened it quickly. It was short, but it made her eyes water. "Sorry for the silence. I've been working in the outer zone. Miss you too. Right again?" Leona laughed softly. A quiet, happy sound. The kind that comes from a heavy heart finally lifting. She typed back, "Going on a journey. I'll tell you everything when I get back." She hit send. Then she looked around the ship one last time. Everything was ready. The next day, the Valar launched. As the engines hummed and the stars shifted around them, Leona stood near the front window. The stars ahead were unknown and far, but they didn't feel empty. They felt full of possibility. A signal had come, and Earth had answered. Not because they had to, but because that's what humans do, even when they feel lost. Even when the people they care about grow distant, they reach out, they try again, they hope. The stars looked different from space. Leona Hayes stood by the viewing window inside the ESV Valor, watching the stars stretch as the ship entered faster than light travel. Behind her, crew members moved quietly, checking systems and keeping busy. But in her heart, Leona felt still, like something inside her had paused. The message from her brother. Mason kept replaying in her mind. Sorry for the silence. Miss you too. Right again? It made her happy? But it also made her feel the distance again. The kind of distance not measured in light years, but in time, in quiet. In the fear that maybe you've grown apart from someone you still care about. She had written back before the ship launched, but now there was silence again. No new message. Just space and the mission ahead. They were heading toward a system that no human had ever entered. The coordinates came from that strange, broken alien signal, cry for help, and maybe call to connect. Leona looked around. The ship, everything was quiet, calm, prepared, but she could feel the tension in the air. No one said it out loud, but they all felt it. They were heading toward something unknown. Later that day, Leona sat in the crew lounge. A young officer named Jan was sitting nearby, staring at a small photo in her hand. It was a picture of two people smiling. Leona smiled gently. Someone you miss? Jan nodded. My best friend. We grew up together. She moved to Mars last year. I thought we'd stay in touch. We didn't, Leona understood. Jan sighed. I want to send a message, but I don't know what to say. Leona paused, then said softly, start with something small, a memory, a joke, anything. Sometimes the first word is the hardest. Jan looked thoughtful. Did that work for her? You, Leona nodded slowly. Yes. A small message brought someone back into my life. That night, Leona wrote another message to Mason. She didn't wait. She didn't worry about saying the right thing. She just typed, I'm somewhere between Earth and the unknown, thinking of you. I hope you're doing okay. She hit send. Then she leaned back and watched the stars move. Days passed. The ship traveled far. Through empty sectors, past dying stars, closer and closer to the signal's origin. The crew stayed busy. Some trained, some read books, some drew. They all missed someone. Everyone had left something behind: family, friends, places they loved, but something about the mission gave them strength. They were here for a reason, not for war, not for power, but to respond. To say we heard you. One morning, the ship's scanner beeped. Leona rushed to the bridge. Captain, said the pilot, we're nearing the source of the signal. The screen showed a small system, a sun, a few rocky planets, and one large world. That world was dark. No lights, no signs of life, but when they zoomed in, they saw the truth. The planet was burned. Smoke covered its skies. Cities were in ruins. The bridge fell silent. Leona whispered, This is where the signal came from. They slowly entered orbit. The scanners searched for life signs. At first, there was nothing. Then faint readings. Underground, there are survivors, the science officer said. Very weak. Very few. But alive. Leona gave the order, prepare a landing team, medical translation, security. An hour later, they landed. The planet's surface was dark, gray, and quiet. The wind blew dust across broken buildings. Deep below, they found something unexpected. A hidden shelter. Inside were strange beings, thin, tall, with silver skin and large glowing eyes. They were weak, frightened, but still alive. The translator worked slowly. Leona knelt down and spoke. Gently, we heard your message, she said. We came to help. The alien leader looked up with wide, surprised eyes. Its voice shook as it spoke. We hoped, but we didn't think anyone would come. Leona felt something shift in her heart, a warmth, a connection. We came because we believe no one should be left alone, she said. That night, as they gave food and medicine to the survivors, Leona received a message. From Mason it said, "Your message reached me. I'm proud of you. I'll be waiting when you return." Tears filled her eyes. She smiled. Far away from home, on a ruined planet, surrounded by strangers, Leona no longer felt alone. Humanity had answered a broken signal in the dark, not because they had to, but because it was right. Because even when people feel distant, even when they move away, hope is what brings them back. Asterisk, the underground shelter was cold and quiet. Dim lights flickered along the curved metal walls. Leona Hayes walked slowly through the narrow passage, listening to the soft hum of life support systems and the quiet breathing of the alien survivors. They were called the Narrow-Thi, thin, tall beings with gentle voices and glowing eyes. Their movements were slow. Their eyes held pain. It's not just from wounds, but from fear, something else lost. Leona knew that feeling too well. She thought of Mason again. Her brother's latest message had been kind and warm. But still, she hadn't written back. She didn't know what to say. She was afraid of saying the wrong thing. Afraid that time had changed things too much now. As she watched the Narrow-Thi, trying to stay alive in a shelter beneath their ruined world, she wondered, was it the same for them? Were they afraid of reaching out too? One of the Narrow-Thi, named Saul, had started to speak more. Leona sat beside him, sharing warm broth from Earth's supplies. Saul looked at her with tired eyes. "We thought no one would hear our signal," he said in a soft voice. "We thought we were forgotten." Leona shook her head gently. "You weren't, we heard. We came." Saul's hand shook slightly. "But why? You didn't know us? We're not your kind?" Leona looked down, then answered, "Someone I care about once stopped writing to me. It hurt, but I didn't give up. I sent one more message, and I learned something." She looked into his eyes. Sometimes even if someone is far away, even if they feel like a stranger, they're still hoping for a reply, hoping not to be forgotten. Saul stayed quiet, but his eyes softened. Later that day, the Earth team found a hidden data cord deep in the shelter. It held recordings from the days before the planet was attacked. Engineers worked carefully to repair it. Hours later, they played. The first video, it showed the sky darkening, bright lights appearing above the planet. Ships dark and silent firing beams of heat that tore through cities. The Zarniks, a cruel species, known in whispers, but never confirmed. Now the truth was clear. The Zarnoks had attacked the Narrow-Thi. No warning. No reason, just destruction. The crew watched the recording in silence. Leona felt something deep in her chest. Sadness, anger, but mostly a heavy ache. These people had tried to survive. They had sent a signal, small, desperate message, and Earth had been the only one to answer. Later, Leona sat alone in the medbay. The soft blue lights reminded her of home. She picked up her tablet and finally began to write. "Mason, I'm still out here. We found survivors. They're scared like I was when we stopped talking, but they're strong. I think of you every day. I want to tell you more when I get back. Maybe we can start again." She hit send. She didn't know what Mason would say, but writing helped. It made her feel closer, less alone. That night, Saul approached her again. "We used to speak to other worlds," he said, "but no one answered. Then your voice came, strong, calm, full of care." Leona smiled gently. "That's what we try to be." Saul reached out and touched her hand lightly, reminded us what hope feels like. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Hope was already in the room. The next day, the scanners on the ESV Valor picked up something new. A small ship's Zarnok's design was entering the system. Everyone moved quickly. Defense systems were prepared. Shields were. Leona stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the screen. "We don't fire unless fired upon," she ordered. The Zarnok's ship circled the planet, then sent a signal. It was short, sharp. A warning. "You should not be here." The message ended, and the ship disappeared into the stars. The crew was shaken. The Narrow-Thi were afraid. But Leona stood firm. "They know we're here," she said. and they know we care. She sent a reply into open space. We are human. We protect the lost. We are not leaving. No answer came. But something else did. A message from Mason. It said, I've been thinking too. I want us to stay close, even from far away. I'm here. I'll wait for you. Leona smiled, tears in her eyes. She looked around at her crew, at the Nerethi, the stars beyond. She didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain. Humans don't run from silence. They answer. They reach out. They reconnect. Even across the stars. The underground shelter had grown quieter. The Nerethi were healing. Slowly, Earth's doctors were helping them. Food was shared, medicines were given. But something more important was happening. Trust was growing. Leona Hayes watched the children of the Nerethi drawing on the wall with light pens. They had no toys, no music, and no home. But they smiled, and they laughed softly. It gave her hope. Still, a quiet sadness stayed with her. Not because of the mission, but because of Mason. He had replied to her last message, said he wanted to stay close. But since then, nothing. Leona kept checking her screen, but it stayed empty. Had he changed his mind? Was he too busy? Or maybe he just didn't know what to say. She understood. Even when people care, sometimes they get stuck in silence. She had felt that way. Before, unsure, distant, wanting to connect but afraid it would hurt. Now the Nerethi reminded her of that same feeling. They were trying to trust again, trying to speak again, trying to hope again. She couldn't give up. One morning, alarms rang across Valor. A new Zarnuk ship had entered orbit. This time, it didn't send a message. It opened fire. The first shot hit the ground near the old city. It wasn't a strong attack, but it was a warning. The crew acted fast. Shields were raised. Drones were launched to block further strikes. Leona stood on the bridge, her voice steady. We do not fire unless we must, but we protect the survivors. Always. The Zarnek's ship hovered above, silent. It didn't attack again. It simply circled. Watching, Leona sent a clear broadcast. We are not enemies. We are guardians. If you harm them again, we will respond. Then she turned off the feed. Later in the medbay, Leona sat beside Saul. His health was improving, but his mind was heavy. They have returned, he said quietly. Yes, Leona replied. They do not understand your kind. You protect strangers. You offer kindness with no reward. Leona gave a small smile. That's what makes us human. Saul tilted his head. Why? Why risk so much? She thought for a moment. When someone moves far away and you miss them, and you don't talk for a long time, it can feel like they're gone. But the truth is they're still there. You just have to take the first step again. You just have to believe the connection is still possible. Saul looked down. Speak from experience, I do. Leona stood. Zarneks want us to leave. But we won't, because someone has to show the galaxy what it means to care, even from far away. That evening, something amazing happened. The Nerethi asked to learn Earth languages. They wanted to speak more clearly. They wanted to connect. A teacher on the ship began daily lessons. Nerethi children repeated simple words: peace, friend, help, hope. And when Leona heard them say hope, she felt tears in her eyes. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about rebuilding something lost. Later, Leona walked through the quiet observation deck. Stars glittered outside like tiny promises. She opened her tablet again. No new messages from Mason. She stared at the screen, unsure. Then she wrote, Sometimes I don't know what to say. I get quiet. I disappear. But I'm always thinking of you, even now across the stars. She pressed send. Then she sat quietly for a long time. The next morning a reply came. It said, I do the same. But I never stopped caring. Maybe we can. Start small. One message at a time. Leona smiled. Later in the briefing room, the crew gathered. The Zarnek's ship was still in orbit. There was a chance it would bring others. The team was ready but calm. We stay, Leona said. We help. The Neruthi rebuild show the Zarniks and the galaxy what humans are. Not fighters, but lifelines. That afternoon, the Valor team began building small homes above the surface. The Neruthi joined them. Tools were shared. Laughter returned. One young Neruthi girl handed Leona a drawing, showed a human and a Neruthi. Holding hands under the stars, she said in quiet, careful English, "Friend." Leona placed her hand over her heart. "Yes," she said, "friend." That night she wrote to Mason again. "You once said we were different now. But I think the people we become still carry the people we were. I believe we can reconnect, even after time, even from far away." And she knew whether it was her brother, the Neruthi, or any soul in the dark hope is never too far to reach. Asterisk, the sun of the Neruthi world was rising again. It looked pale behind the dusty clouds, but it still gave light, a sign that even after destruction, a new day could begin. Leona Hayes stood on the surface, watching the new shelters take shape. The humans in Neruthi worked side by side, sharing tools, food, and quiet smiles. There were no words big enough for what they had lost, but hope didn't need big words. It just needed small steps. Still, something weighed on Leona's heart. Mason, her brother, had written back. He said he wanted to start again, message by message. But since then, silence. Maybe it was her turn again. Maybe he was waiting like she used to wait. She kept thinking about the last message she sent him, even after time. Even from far away. Had it been too much? Too soon? Or maybe not enough? She didn't know, and that not knowing hurt. Later, that morning, a new signal reached the Valor. But it wasn't from the Zarniks. It was from another species, the Talari, a peaceful race from a nearby star cluster. They had received Earth's public broadcast, the message Leona had sent to the stars. "We are human. We protect the lost. We are not leaving." The Talari had seen the burning planet. They had watched silently for years, afraid to act. Now, Earth's courage had changed something. The message was clear. "We want to help." Leona felt something deep shift inside her. One message had brought Earth to the Neruthi. Now that same spirit was bringing others. A second message followed, then a third. More species, more allies. Quiet races who had always feared the Zarniks, but now wanted to stand together. Earth sent replies. Plans began. The Unity Fleet was born. Ships from Earth, Talari, and 3 other peaceful species started making their way toward the ruined world. Not for war, but for protection, for rebuilding, for peace. In the conference room, Leona spoke to her crew. "Years ago, we thought we were alone in the dark. But when someone called, we listened. We answered, and now others are listening." 2. A young technician raised his hand. "Captain, you think the Zarniks will come back?" Leona nodded slowly. "Yes, I think they will, but we won't be alone." That night, she sat by herself on the top level of the ship, staring out at the stars. They used to feel cold and far. Now they felt alive with voices, with hopes, with silent connections waiting to be made. She opened her tablet and began to type. "I think about you more than I say. Some days I wait for you to write first. Some days I think you're waiting. For me, either way, I'm still here." She paused, then added, "Maybe we've both changed, but I still believe in us, still believe in family." She sent the message, and she waited. No reply came that night. The next day, the first Unity Fleet ships arrived. Elegant Talari vessels hovered in orbit. Long, flowing ships from the Adari glided beside them. They didn't bring weapons. They brought supplies, builders, healers, translators. The Neruthi stood in awe. Leona watched with quiet pride, not just because Earth had started it, but because humanity had reminded the galaxy what it meant to care, what it meant to try, what it meant to hope later. While helping a Neruthi child repair a tool, her wrist screen blinked. A message. From Mason. She stood still for a moment, then opened it. "I got your message. I read it 3 times. I didn't know what to say, so I stayed quiet again. I'm sorry. I miss you too. Maybe we can video call next time? Leona smiled. Not a small smile, a full one. It's a kind that rises from your chest and pushes away the weight you didn't realize you'd been carrying. She typed, yes, let's talk soon. One step at a time. I'm proud of us. Then she looked outside again at the gathering ships. At the people building a new world from ruins. Some things took time. Some distances took courage to cross. But humans had always reached, across the impossible. Across oceans, across stars, across silence. Because that's what it means to be human. To keep reaching. To keep believing. Even when someone moves far away. The Unity fleet filled the sky. From the ground it looked like a river of stars flowing above the burned world. Ships from Earth, the Talari, the Adari, and more hovered together, shining with soft lights. There were no weapons on display. Number, threats, just presence, just unity. Leona Hayes stood on the hilltop beside Saul, the Narathai leader. Below them, shelters stretched across the valley. A new village was forming brick by brick, smile by smile. Do you believe they will return? Saul asked quietly. Leona nodded. Yes, the Zarnoks will come. Saul looked up at the sky. And will you be ready? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she opened a small message on her wrist screen. It was from Mason. It said, tomorrow, let's do that video call. I'm nervous, but I want to try. Leona stared at the message for a long time. Her heart felt full. Not just with joy, but with something deeper relief. She wasn't alone in wanting to reconnect. He wanted it too. She closed the screen then, turned to Saul. We're not ready because we're strong, she said. We're ready because we're not alone. That night, the Zarnoks came. 10 warships. Dark, silent, cold. They didn't send a message. They didn't speak. They just approached. The Unity. The fleet didn't attack. They stayed in formation. Leona stood on the bridge of the Valar. Watching the screens, her heart was steady. All ships, she said into the cum. Hold your ground. We will not strike first. On the ground, the Narathai gathered in the new shelters. Children held hands. Families stayed close. Earth doctors stayed with them. No one ran. A message came through. It was from the Zarnoks. Leave. This world is not yours. Leona answered, calm and clear. This world belongs to those who live on it. We are here as friends. We will not leave. The Zarnoks paused. Then, slowly they turned. The warships began to drift away. One by one, disappeared into the stars. The bridge erupted with quiet joy. No shouting. Just peace. The war that could have destroyed everything ended. Without a shot, because Earth had chosen hope over fear. Later that evening, Leona sat alone in her cabin. She opened her screen and called Mason. His face appeared. Older than she remembered. A little tired, a little unsure. Hi, he said. Hi, she replied. They looked at each other for a moment, then Mason smiled. I didn't know what to say, Leona. Smiled too. Me neither. But I'm glad we're here. They talked for over an hour. Not about the war. Not about big things. Just memories. Stories. Small things that made them laugh again. When the call ended, Leona felt something lift. The distance was still there, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It was just space, and space could be crossed. The next day, the rebuilding began faster. With the Zarnoks gone, hope bloomed like a new spring. The Unity fleet helped build farms, schools, and homes. The Narathai laughed freely again. Her songs returned, and everywhere they went, they told a story. We sent a signal into the stars. We thought no one would hear. The humans came. They brought the galaxy with them. Leona walked through the village watching a group of children learn Earth languages. One of them asked her, "Why did you come?" She knelt beside them. Because someone cried for help, she said. And humans don't ignore that, even if it's far, even if it's hard. She stood and looked up. The stars had once been quiet and distant. Now, they were full of voices, full of hands reaching out to one another. Leona had felt that silence in her own life. She had felt the ache of missing someone who had moved away, of wanting to speak but not knowing how. But she had learned something. Hope is not loud. It's quiet, eh? Whisper, a message, a hand offered in the dark. It doesn't always come quickly. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it returns after years. But it always lives in every signal, in every reply, in every human heart.